230 lives were lost July 17, 1996. One of them was Heidi Snow's fiancé. Her grief could have consumed her, but instead it inspired her to found a support network for people like herself. It is a story she tells in her new book called Surviving Sudden Loss, and Heidi Snow, the founder and executive director of Aircraft Casualty Emotional Support Services, Access, is here to share her story. Heidi, welcome.
Oh, thank you.
Let's start back on that day your world changed, July 17th, 1996. Tell me about that.
So that day, my fiance went off on that flight, and about an hour later, my mother called and said, "I know Michelle left, but please tell me he didn't actually get on the plane." A plane went down going to Paris, and I remember immediately just thinking, all right, maybe he switched planes. Maybe it wasn't TWA, but I always remember the ticket in his hand, and I was sort of just in shock and just hoping that somehow he got on a different flight. And
when you found out he didn't, then obviously it was a terrible blow. I know.
And then then I saw it on the news and just watched the footage on the ocean. And early on, they were saying there's a possibility that there's still survivors. We're looking, we're searching, and then the next morning it was realized that no survivors were possible.
You say your grief intensified after the initial shock.
Yes.
What did that happen?
So right after the incident, we all gathered together at the Ramada Inn, and we were all together with all the family members waiting to learn if our loved ones were actually, were recovered. And after a little while, that site has to shut down, and we're basically expected to go home and resume our lives as if things are normal, go back to work. And that was kind of early on. It was about 2 weeks after. And when I left, Michelle's body still had not been found. And I was in New York City, so I thought, well, of course, this is a big city. There must be a support group for plane crashes. And
you learned there wasn't, right?
And there wasn't. And I called Giuliani's office. He always said, if you ever need anything, give me a call. And I asked him, what do I do? I'm in this big city. Is there some sort of group? And he had the insight at that time. He said, maybe you'd like to meet with the Pan Am families. It's been 8 years for them, but they may actually be able to offer you some insight. Do you think
is it more difficult for somebody to lose a loved one if they lose them in a sudden mass casualty event like the Pan Am, like TWA, like 9/11, than a more predictable sort of loss?
I just think there's a lot of media around it, and with air disasters, it takes a really long time to determine what actually happened and what their last moments might have been like. And it also can take years, and sometimes no remains are ever found. And I think that's the difference. It's the fact that you really don't know what happened. And of course, it's just really hard to figure out what may have happened to them, and it also takes a long time to determine what the cause was, and so that waiting process can be very difficult.
In your book, Surviving Sudden Loss, was it difficult for you to get people to talk about their own personal experiences with loss?
No, because through Access we have 250 grief mentors who have all lost people in private crashes, commercial plane crashes, and military air disasters. And the premise of it is partnering people of like experience. So we match moms to moms, siblings to siblings, and people who have been through their loss for at least 2 years or more to be able to help them see what may lay ahead. Instead of having everybody from a specific incident talking to one another, we actually give them somebody down the road. And that's the whole idea of this book, is the ability to identify there's people who have lost their spouses, their parents, their children, and if you can just pick this up, and it validates all of the feelings that people have. And it basically is the same concept of Access, but in written form, so that it can be more widely distributed, and so people can identify with people of like loss.
Have you sort of sketched out a pathway through the grief toward coping in your 15 years of working with this issue? Is there some guidance you can share right now with people who are suffering?
Yeah, we find the commonalities after conducting all of these interviews very much are just being able to accept that a lot of people want your grief to go away after the funeral, and your people around you may want you to go back to work, find somebody new in your life. And the main thing is everybody talks about how important it is to just embrace it, live it, go through it, talk about it, and find people around them who allow them to grieve. And people quickly determine who their friends are. In this book, I find so many people describe that the people they thought would be there for them actually were not those people, and how they've had to, develop new friends who accept them as the new person they are after their lives are forever changed. They're a new person right after this happens, and all their plans are cut off, and everything the way they thought life would be is no longer that life anymore.
Well, Heidi, you're there for them, and we appreciate you coming in here and sharing some of the story with us.
Well, thank you.
Good luck with the book.
Thank you.